Thank you. A final reminder, the straw poll is still open, and if you would like to participate in the straw poll, please do so in the next half hour or so, and then the straw poll will be closing. And we have one more speaker before we break for lunch. We have with us Cliff Maloney Jr., who is the national president of Young Americans for Liberty. Cliff is a Pennsylvania product. He born and raised in Delaware County, went to the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, and now he's working all across the country building grassroots on behalf of conservative candidates. Please welcome Cliff Maloney Jr.
Good morning. You guys hear me out there? You got me? 2, 3. There we go. You guys got me? I got a secret mic. It's hidden in here. Well, it's an honor to be here. You know, Pennsylvania's home. It's always good to come home. As Loman said, I spent a lot of time born and raised in Delaware County. Anybody here from Eastern Pennsylvania? Okay. If I tell you I'm an Eagles fan, it looks like I'm going to have a pretty rough crowd. I spent a lot of time out in Johnstown, so I got to get a good use of the Pennsylvania Turnpike and kind of understand the entire state, meet a lot of great people out here. So I want to thank Loman and the entire team for putting on this event, because it's always good to see that there are people fighting the good fight to actually represent the Constitution here in Pennsylvania. I want to talk to you guys today about my work at Young Americans for Liberty. I work with college students around the country, and I don't think I have to tell you twice, the college campus right now is not the most friendly place for those of us who believe in lower taxes, more freedom, and the Constitution. Anybody here see any stories? You watch Tucker, some campus craziness. There's a lot of things going on right now on campus. And when people ask me, why is it so bad for people who believe in limited government, I don't give them the answer they're expecting. I understand that the campus and the in-classroom experience is pretty bad when it comes to the ideals of the professors. But the major problem we're finding is that campus right now is actually emotional. The left has kind of turned to this deep frustration and the ends justify the means for them to use any type of violence or any type of anger, any type of way to shut down these conservative and libertarian speakers in a way that tries to keep any ideas that aren't far left, socialist, progressive, completely off the table. And so we're doing some things to fight back on that, and I want to kind of share those with you today to talk about the strategies, because we're not just going to sit back and let them do this. So the first thing I'll tell you is there are certain rules that these college bureaucrats and college administrators will use to shut down speakers that don't fall into their leftist ideology. Anybody here ever heard of a free speech zone? Now, this is different from a safe space. We'll talk about those some other time. But a free speech zone is when a college administrator decides, even though this is a public taxpayer-funded school that's supposed to uphold the First Amendment, we are going to pick a location where you'll be granted your free speech rights. So let's imagine this is the campus here. I want you to take the coffee cup on your table and imagine that one coffee cup is the free speech zone. And by that definition, that's probably twice the size of the free speech zones that they're allocating. Some of these campuses, it's legitimately 10 feet by 10 feet. And what happens is, if one of our students is passing out a constitution outside of the free speech zone, they might be stopped. They might be told, hey, you've got to go back to that free speech zone. That's the area you can spread the ideas. But what happens when one of Bernie's students is pushing for a 70% income tax and nobody says anything to him or to her? And you might say, well, does that really happen? Well, what I'm here to say is the college bureaucrats shouldn't have the ability to dictate what can and what can't be said on campus, and so we're trying to work to take away that jurisdiction from them at all, so that none of their bias can be heard. And so we've worked to remove these free speech zones. We've worked to remove any of the codes or the policies that these bureaucrats have built into the system so that all ideologies can be heard. See, here's what the left fears the most. The left fears students hearing other ideologies. Because in the free marketplace of ideas, when students are exposed to individual liberty, when students are exposed to what prosperity looks like in a system like capitalism, when they're exposed to those ideas, you know what happens? They flock to them. They're excited about them because they're not getting that message in the classroom. And so they're hearing this, they're getting excited, and they're moving towards it. We call this our National Fight for Free Speech campaign. We partner with tons of organizations on campus that are promoting conservative and libertarian values. We have reformed and gone in and beaten back against these bureaucrats. We've now changed codes and won on 51 different universities here in the United States. Now you might ask how we do that. Well, there's a few different tactics we use. The first is we need to have an incident so we can get legal standing. So we'll have students hand out constitutions. I didn't know that was controversial, but in America it is. We had a student up in Massachusetts handing out constitutions. He's a Navy veteran. Gives 4 years of his life, takes an oath to uphold the Constitution, defend the United States. Gets out of the service. He's going to college in Massachusetts. He's handing out pocket constitutions. The college administrator approaches him and says, excuse me, you can't hand those out. That is not an approved document. You must get prior approval from the university to hand out that pocket constitution. Now, I wish that this was some sort of one-off story, okay? But we went in there, we had some fun, we sued them, we won that lawsuit. Had another incident up in Michigan. We had 3 activists handing out pocket constitutions. College bureaucrat comes up again. Well, you know, you might scare people. They're not really ready to hear these ideas. Their words, not mine. They might not be ready to hear these ideas. Said, you're going to have to go back to the free speech zone on campus. Our 3 activists said, you know what? The document I'm handing out gives me the right to be here. It gives me the right to be handing this out. It's a public, taxpayer-funded university. They're supposed to uphold the First Amendment. So they stand their ground. Administrator calls campus police, has them arrested, has them put in jail. They spend a night in jail. There's just 3 activists. Our chapter president on this campus, she's about yay tall, female. I mean, I'm so proud of her for having the courage to sit there and say, look, you know, we're not going to continue to stand for this. Now, we don't push our students to get arrested. I always want to put that disclaimer up there. We're not pushing them to do that. But it kind of shows you the lengths you have to go on campus if you want to go against the grain. If you want to represent our ideas, it is not an easy task. So that's why I'm so proud of the activists for the work that they're doing to push back and create that opportunity for us to be able to spread our message far and wide on campuses throughout the country. Now, the past 2 weeks have been insane, to say the least. We've done about 115 media hits in the last 2 weeks. Some of you probably saw this. An incident happened at Tulane University. So there is a student there. I'll give you the timeline as easily as I can. I'll let you guys put the pieces together. Anybody see the news? A student had his door lit on fire at Tulane University. So here's what happened. About maybe 2.5, 3 weeks ago now, I get a call from the White House. They said, hey, you've been working on free speech. We want to have YAL at the White House. President Trump's going to sign an executive order shining a light on this epidemic of free speech on college campus. So I said, great. We got to bring me plus about 12 YAL students from around the country that have really been impacted by this, the students who were arrested, and some of these other cases like up in Massachusetts. So all of them had this opportunity to go to the White House. Well, the news started to get out about this. Well, all of a sudden at the Tulane campus, some of the radical leftists didn't like that Young Americans for Liberty was going to be going to the White House. And they associated us with Trump, and all of a sudden all these signs went up on campus. Yale is misogynistic. Yale's racist. Yale's homophobic. Okay, where'd this come from? And so all of a sudden, they started posting things and outing some of our members at Tulane next couple days. This individual is part of the YAL chapter. This individual is part of the YAL chapter. Well, all of a sudden, Peyton Lofton, his name was spread and kind of posted and outed, or doxed, as they're calling it these days, kind of outed to signal to people, hey, go after this person. 48 hours later, his dorm room door was lit on fire by 3 radical leftists. Now, luckily for us, it's 2019, so there are cameras. And these 3 son of a guns, for lack of a better word, have now been arrested and are being charged for arson and could face 6 to 20 years. But these are the types of battles, and that incident, I would hope, does not become a trend, but it shows you, I mean, what the left will go to shut down, to threaten, to put that fear of force in somebody's head because we don't agree with their ideology. And there are two opportunities on a college campus to really reach folks, to impact them. The first is in the classroom. We are not going to win that battle. If you think you're going to win the battle, if you're still donating to a higher ed institution, God bless you, but stop wasting your money. They are turning out individuals that do not believe in our beliefs and people that are going to work against us, especially in the political arena, to advance what we're trying to do. Stop giving them money. Just because it's your alma mater and it's a place that you love to go, I mean, you really have to look at what is happening in these systems. The place we can impact is the on-campus experience. There is a reason that groups that we partner with, groups like College Republicans, Turning Point, YAF, Students for Life, Students for Liberty, there's a reason all of us are working in this space, because there's so much opportunity. And that's why Young Americans for Liberty is laser focused on college campuses, because there's a chance to speak to people. Now, colleges, students are supposed to have open minds. They're supposed to be able to listen. They're not getting that message in the classroom. So it is our opportunity to impact them on campus, to have conversations, to bring speakers to campus, to expose them to these ideas. So that is what we're really trying to do. We do campus activism. You could call it street theater. Okay, I'll share one example with you. We did a program called Your Life, Your Right. Because we're trying to get students to really think, what is the role of government? Okay, today they're being fed identity politics from the left nonstop. That's all they're getting, is they're demonizing the right, and it's all about emotion. So if we can break through that and actually have a conversation, that's what's going to change the culture war. That's what's going to get them to think, you know, these guys aren't all devils. Some of these guys and girls on the right, you know, they just don't want the government taking 30% of every dollar I make. Does that make them evil? Maybe we should talk about these things. So that's the question we want to put in their heads. What is the proper role of government? If we have that conversation with a 19-year-old, that is an honest conversation. It doesn't have to be some deep philosophical policy wonk conversation. I've got plenty of friends in D.C. They're all writing white papers. God love them. But my efforts are to reach the kids that want to have a beer at night and they want to get their college degree and they want to be successful. Those are the normal folks. You guys know how this is. Look around you in your community. You're like smacking people on the head. You know, come on, how do you not care about these things? People aren't liberal. They're just apathetic. And when you look at college campus, it's the exact same thing when it comes to college students. And that's an opening for us. They're not diehard socialists. Not yet. But when they're coming in, they're apathetic, and we need to be able to touch that. So that question, what is the role of government? This program, Your Life, Your Right, we build this huge dodgeball field on campus. Students got a megaphone. You know, hey, who wants to play dodgeball? Everybody loves dodgeball. So we've got two spots on the dodgeball field. One of them is for the criminal, and one is for the law-abiding student. So we give them each a dodgeball. We get two students to role play for us. We say, okay, here are the rules. You've got your dodgeball, you've got your dodgeball. This is the only rule. This is a dodgeball-free zone. So what does that mean? It means the law-abiding student has to give up the dodgeball. And the criminal, well, we just make some fun out of it, so we actually get a bag of dodgeballs and we bring it over to the criminal. And you see what's happening here is you might think, oh, that's elementary, that's, you know, is that really reaching people? Yes. You know how many leftists are on campus thinking, well, if we just ban the guns, we'll get rid of all the problems. And having them have that conversation of what the government can do, what it means to have an inalienable right to something, and why criminals don't follow the laws, and that right to self-defense. Doing projects like that on campus to try to get students to understand what it means when we talk about the proper role of government and where we're coming from when we say we want to limit government control and follow the Constitution. I want to talk with you all about a program we launched because I'm looking for some help here in Pennsylvania. I'm going to make a statement right now that is going to offend a lot of party officials, but it's a statement I make across the country. Having an R next to your name does not make you a conservative. I'll say it again so the people in the back can hear it. Having an R next to your name does not make you a conservative. We see folks that, when you get an applause line, you got to go for the exact same one again. We see folks that are Republicans. I'll tell you, I go to Texas, one of the worst epidemics. Some of these red states, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, the Republicans there, some of them that run as Republicans, they vote to raise taxes, they vote to take your liberty away, they increase regulation, they increase spending. That is not in the Republican platform. Now, I happen to be a Republican because I believe in cutting taxes, in cutting spending, pro-civil liberties, pro-Constitution, more freedom, less government. And so one of the things we're doing with our students is we've kind of built this coalition on campus. I mentioned those groups earlier. We work with all of these groups, not only just our YAL chapters, but YAF, Turning Point, College Republicans, Students for Life, Students for Liberty. We work with all these groups, and what we've decided to do is, look, we want to take this youth army and we want to deploy it out into the community. We want to figure out ways, how do we go from the on-campus coalition we've built and take it out into the community? Many of you have heard of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, okay? And she's a very easy target for folks to go after, and they should target her when it comes to policy. But I will tell you, if you look at her following on Instagram, you look at her following on Snapchat, you look at her following anywhere, you add it all up, it's more than like probably the closest 25 congressional Republicans combined. She has a following. She understands reaching people. She understands getting young people motivated. The one thing I want to share with you, the gift that she is handing us, and for those of you that understand what I said about having an R next to your name does not make you a conservative, the gift she is handing us is she is forcing a debate between capitalism and socialism. Because for years, a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats could kind of hide under this moderate, well, I'm a moderate. I need to listen to my district. That's why they're voting to raise taxes and increase regulation. And what she's doing is she's forcing the Democrats, similarly to how the Tea Party forced the Republicans in 2010. She's forcing the Democrats to show their hand. Well, are we Democrat light? Are we capitalism light? Or are we socialists? And she's saying, no, we're socialists. Which I think is a gift to us, because it's going to force the Republicans, hopefully, and even if it doesn't, it should force us as the activists to say, you know what? Let's own that capitalism mantle. Let's really show the differences between capitalism and socialism. You know, and if you look, I mean, Margaret Thatcher's quote, problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. I mean, these opportunities do not come up often where there are so many clear things, and she is owning socialism. It's going to be up to us, every single person in this room, to really educate the community and to go out there and push politicians to make sure that they understand, A, socialism is bad, and B, we need to out those that are trying to play both sides, whether they're Republican or Democrat. So I've got 4 minutes left. I want to explain to you this program we launched called Operation Win at the Door and ask for some help from everybody in the room. Because I think what we're trying to do should resonate, especially to folks here in Pennsylvania, because I think there's a huge opportunity here. We decided in 2018 we were going to launch this pilot program because I wanted to figure out what is the difference when it comes to grassroots activists. What is something we can do that makes a difference? If you act like an establishment candidate, if you act like an establishment organization, you try to spend the money they're going to spend, do the tactics they're going to do, they're going to outspend you every single time. So what is a competitive advantage for a group like ours? We have this coalition of young people. We could do digital ads, we could send mail, we could do radio, we could do TV. All those things, there's a lot of good groups doing those. All those things, it's one thing you got, you can do those. Money. That's not our differential. For a lot of you that run local groups, that's not going to be your differential. If it is, call me. I'd love to chat with who's ever financing you. That'd be a huge help to me. But the reality is, as a grassroots organization, you need to figure out ways to mobilize the grassroots. That's your comparative and competitive advantage. So we looked at door knocking. We said, how effective can this be? Can we get out in the community? Can we actually make a difference if we take this Youth Army and go talk to people and mobilize for folks that represent our ideas? So then we had to decide, okay, that's the tactic we're going to use. What level are we going to focus on? Are we going to do dog catcher races, school board, city council, state legislature, congressional, senatorial, governor races, statewide races, presidential? I told you guys I went to school in Johnstown. I studied math education. I was a middle school math teacher. The $22 trillion debt, that's what said, enough's enough. We got to get out there and fix this. So I looked at the math on what the impact could be depending on where we focused our efforts. And I said, what's it mean for liberty? What's it mean for freedom here in the Commonwealth if you elect somebody to borough council versus electing somebody to U.S. Senate and everywhere in between? What is that worth? What is that impact? And then I said, okay, we've got our impact score. How many doors do we have to knock to move the needle 10 points? 10 percentage points. So if we found a candidate that we thought was at 45%, or if we found a candidate that we thought we could move the needle 10 points for a win, what would we have to do? And then we did the magic equation. We figured out what would that cost? What would it cost? Because if you're talking about a presidential race, you're trying to move at 10 points, you're talking billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. How does he say it? Billions of dollars. But if you're talking about a local race, you're talking a lot less. So what we decided was the math kind of jumped out at us that we need to focus on state legislature races. Because at the state legislative level, the amount of impact you can have by knocking doors, by sending a youth army out. In 2018, we endorsed 76 candidates at the state level. We won 37 races. The 37 races that we won, we used a simple tactic. Put 10 students on the ground for 30 days. We pay for their housing. We pay for the literature. We pay for the door-knocking software. We pay for their gas money, and we give them a $2,000 stipend to be on the ground for an entire month. They each knock about 3,000 doors. So you do the math, 10 people on the ground for a state house race, we knock 30,000 doors for each of those races. We elected 37 people across the country. We've now got champions that are proposing our legislation at the state level. We've now got a bench to pull from when people want to run for Congress, and we're like, who do we have to run? Well, there's not really a conservative that's ready to run. We're changing that narrative. And we've also created people who have a platform. It's real funny, when you're a local activist, the press won't take your comment, especially if the press is pretty liberal, depending on the area you're in. But all of a sudden, you get elected to state rep. Ah, yes, the local state rep had this to say. It's giving our people a platform. So in my last seconds here, what I'd say to everybody here, we're looking for viable and principled candidates. They're going to cut government, they're going to cut taxes, they're going to cut regulation, they're going to give us our freedom back. We don't want the people that are going to give us excuses. Well, I had to get in line to vote for this. So my request to every single person out here, yaliberty.org/door. You can recommend a candidate, yaliberty.org/door. Find me those candidates at the state legislative level that we should be involved with, that we should be endorsing. I don't care if it's primary or general. We'll send a team of 10 students out. We'll knock 30,000 doors, and we'll start to build this bench across the country. I want to elect 250 hardcore liberty-type conservatives by the end of 2022. That's how we take the country back. Thank you, everybody.
Well, that brings us to the end of our morning program. I would like to ask everyone to please exit the ballroom and take conversations out in the hallway so that we can turn the ballroom over and get it set for lunch. If you are a sponsor or exhibitor and you have information, you have material in the exhibit hall, you must remove it before the luncheon begins, because while we are having lunch, the hotel is going to be rearranging that room for the College Republicans Conference and for our afternoon workshop. And I'll remind you, we do have an afternoon workshop sponsored by FreedomWorks on how to fight deep state regulators. I hope you'll stick around.